Alrighty, let's get into the automation part of this. So essentially what we're going to be doing is creating a flow, a record triggered flow, which triggers an Apex class. Now the benefit of doing this with a flow is that if you need to customize the trigger to meet your needs, maybe you have a particular type of opportunity that you want to exclude from generating recurring revenue events, you can go ahead and do that without touching any code at all, just by changing the flow that we create. The flow is going to get triggered, and it will, when an opportunity is updated, and it's going to filter for certain criteria. If the opportunity record matches that criteria, it will run the invocable Apex script, and then it will create the records and complete. So I'm just going to walk you through the code at a very high level, explaining what it does. So you can see the entire class here in this reference page here. It basically just deletes any existing records associated with this opportunity. It then checks to see if certain fields are populated, and then it just generates MRR records. There's certain scenarios that are complex that it has to handle as well, and I can walk you through those briefly, but let's make this simple. The first thing that it's doing up here is it's just making it invocable, and this basically just allows you to pass in the opportunity ID from the flow. And here is the invocable method, which we're going to call from our flow. Now it takes in the opportunity ID, it pulls together important fields, so account ID, contract start date, term, MRR, renewal of, stage, amendment of, and record type. And then it calls generate monthly revenue events, which is another method. In this method, first it just checks to see if those fields are populated, so start date, term, and MRR. If not, it ends the flow. Then it will query for existing opportunity IDs, so it just looks to see if there are any MRE records associated with that original opportunity, and it will delete them. This just clears it to make sure the data stays clean. And if the opportunity is not closed won or lost, it will exit after clearing the records. If the opportunity is a closed loss upsell, it will do nothing. Now there's a particular edge case here. If the opportunity is a closed loss renewal, which is what we've identified here, it will create a record that is a churn record, and it will also create a positive MRR record, so they net out to 0, which is important to have a clean revenue waterfall. And then here we get to the main bulk of the function. So it's going to query for the original opportunity, the MRR, the total amendment ARR, and we'll create a list to store the events that are going to get created, put together the variables, so start date and end date. And then we have two functions here. So the first is handle the first revenue month. This is often going to be different than all the subsequent records, because that is when the contract turnover happens. So we have a specific function here that handles that, which I'll take you through quickly. It basically just compares the delta of the two contracts, and will assign it as either an upsell or a downsell or new revenue. And then lastly, we have this create MRE records, which is just going to create the MRE records for you. So this is the Apex class. Now there are two ways you can deploy this. The first is you can do this, put this class in a sandbox, and then you can transfer it to your production org. That is kind of an older way of deploying Apex. The other way you could do it is you could create a SFDX project and deploy it through the command line interface in a VS Code project. I'd recommend looking that up. And the third way would be you can actually download my managed package directly, or it's actually an unmanaged package in this case, and it will install into your org as well. So those are the different ways you can do it. If you need help deploying Apex, feel free to schedule some time with me. I am happy to help. We offer consulting. But there's tons of resources online which you can use to learn how to deploy Apex. Now let's get into the flow. So the flow is going to be basically just a record triggered flow that calls Apex. So we have a full reference for what it looks like here. basically a record triggered flow, a decision filter, which is going to filter for the different scenarios, and the Apex action that calls the invocable script that we just built. And then it's basically just going to look like this. Now, in order to save time, I've already built this into my Scratch org here, so I'm just going to deploy it directly here. So I just deployed the Apex class that I have in my code base here, and I'm also just going to deploy this flow. Alright, so now if we type Apex classes, we can see both of these classes are here now. And if we go to flows, here's our flow. Okay, beautiful. So basically you just create a action. I'll show you how to do it. You just type action, and then you just search for your Apex. So this was our action here. So very simple, delete that. Now the conditions for the opportunity status, basically have closed one, for one that was not previously closed one, closed lost. We have already closed, but key fields changed, mainly term, amount, and start date. We have reopened opportunities because we want those to basically just clear any MRE records, and the default outcome, which is when nothing will be done. So it looks like this deployed successfully. Now I would like to show you what it looks like when we close win an opportunity. So let's take this opportunity and mark it as closed won. And you can see that it's now generated a bunch of MRE records, all related back to the opportunity that generated them and the account, the associated account as well. Now, let's look at the renewal. I'm just going to delete it. Now let's look at the renewal record here. Now what happens if we mark the renewal as closed won, but the amount is actually going to be higher? Let's make it 18,000. So you can see that's an upsell, or it will be an upsell once it's closed won. So that's an upsell of 6,000. And you can now see that that upsell is recognized in the first month, and then the subsequent months are all 1,500 in MRR. So it looks like this flow and Apex script is working and successfully deployed. So we're happy with that. And that concludes this section of the video. In the next video, I'm just going to show you how to make the MRR report, which is pretty basic, but it's quite useful. The hard part is actually what we've already done, which was deploying the Apex script and creating the Salesforce flow. Lastly, I want to take a moment to plug my consulting company, where we do offer implementations of the very architecture which you are seeing in these videos, as well as more complex scenarios. If you are interested in what we have to offer, feel free to book a free assessment call using my Calendly link in the description. And yeah, I would love to chat with you. We also do have an application on the App Exchange called Gauge. Check it out. It can help you out with health scoring. Thank you guys, and see you in the next video.